We'll go. Okay, welcome. I'll go through these quick because we want to get to the juicy stuff, which is all the questions, but welcome to the Marketo Engage Champion Office Hours. Just some house rules. We're going to share experiences and things that we're working on, and might even talk about projects and everything. So anything in here is obviously confidential, kept here. If there's anything that any of the panelists talk about that you'd love to know more about, please feel free to reach out to them, but don't share anything that we kind of talk about here. Just so you guys know, this is being recorded. If you would like to not be recorded, please leave and you'll be able to watch this back. If you guys have any questions, you can email advocacy@adobe.com. Also, don't leave, stay with us. It's going to be fun. I think everybody here will probably have to sign up for our chapter to sign up to register for this, but if not, please sign up for the chapter. You can get updates about all the office hours and everything that we're going to be doing throughout the rest of the year. And there are a ton of other ways for you guys to plug into the community. There are other user groups. I know this is an EMEA and APAC friendly time zone office hours, but we do have people, including some of our panelists, joining us from the States. So here are some of the upcoming user groups in North America. Here are some of the upcoming international user groups. And also I want to call out the European virtual mug that will be happening after Summit. We're going to talk about Summit today, and some of you on this call will maybe going out to Summit, which is exciting, but they will be doing a wrap up and a recap of the Marketo roadmap, which is going to be very exciting because I think there's going to be a lot of new releases that they're going to be talking about. So yes, as I mentioned, Summit, that is the big thing happening in the Adobe world. If you are going to Summit, there are a ton of Marketo Engage sessions. There's also some that are virtual. So if you aren't signed up to go to Summit in person, and if we won't be seeing you in Vegas next week, please sign up virtually. You can then watch back some of the sessions, and it is really worth and going in and catching those. If you are there in person, there are going to be a lot of Ask Me Anything lives happening in the community pavilion. So here's a QR code where you can download some of those details, and there are going to be different sessions based on the solutions. Going through this quick so we can get to the questions, guys. And if you are again at Summit, then please drop by 978, and then you can leave a review and get a gift card. Leave an Adobe review, which we'd love. And there will be some skills exchange sessions as well. This will be available as well after. I'm going really quickly through, but you'll be able to get this afterwards. There's also some Experience League overview and updates that we want to share with you guys real quick. So if you don't know, the Experience League is a great place for you to go and help build your skills. There's tutorials on there. There's all the documentation, insights, blogs, everything for you to read, videos, and it's had a big refresh. So if you've not been to experienceleague.adobe.com in a while, I definitely encourage you to go and check it out. There's a new personalized homepage, new perspectives, and video playlists for you guys to dive into and really get into certain topics that you're interested in and boost your skills across the Adobe product world. The feedback on the new Experience League in that feedback tab. And then these are our panelists today. We won't go individuals and introduce them because we're going to dive into the questions. But as I mentioned before, if you want to connect with them, they're on LinkedIn. Please reach out. You can read their bios if you go to the page as well that you guys originally registered from. So let me also then stop sharing. Dive into questions. So thank you, panelists. And as I mentioned, we do have a couple joining us from the States. So thank you for getting up really early, middle of the night, joining us. As I mentioned, so Summit is coming up. We know at Summit there are going to be releases, exciting new things talked about. Some of it we've had a bit of a preview in, so this is why I really encourage people to join virtually if you can. Some of it is going to be brand new to us. But definitely there's a feeling that Adobe is really pouring some love into Marketo Engage. And we got a really transparent question, which I think I want to start with to get your guys' opinion on. So I have seen how Marketo Engage have lost lots of clients to other platforms. what are they doing to stop this? Which is, it's biting, isn't it? But I think it's good to talk about, because it's good to talk about what the future is. So, Zoe, I'd love to talk with you and get your insights on this.
Sure. This is a topic that's sort of bubbling around on LinkedIn for a while, and people saying, what is the value of Marketo? Has it lost its way? All these other platforms are looking big and bright and shiny, but really, a lot of them are rumours. There's very little foundation. How many people have actually put their hand up and said, oh yes, we've ripped out Marketo and we've gone to somewhere else? I mean, ultimately, if you're a B2B enterprise business, then this Marketo is the platform for you. I mean, right from the beginning, the ability to clone programs and its life cycle and its reporting and everything, it really is the sort of the Rolls Royce, the Ferrari there. However, if you're a company and you're just using it for sending emails, then you're not utilizing it, you're not maximizing it. So yes, you might be better off with just an email platform. You don't need the full integration. So it may not be the right for you if you're not maximizing it. But we only have to look at the last sort of 12, 18 months of the Adobe innovation and roadmap, and just some of the features that they've brought to Marketo. So we've got self-service flow steps back in 2023, interactive webinars, we've got interactive chat. Of course, at the moment, the latest new release is the new email editor. So really looking into the design studio, Adobe has been investing greatly in that, in how you can improve and the email designs without needing a developer or a coder. There's also in the pipeline, and some of these are the foundational programs that have been there from the beginning. So also landing pages and forms, they're starting to get some attention and love, and the Adobe team are working in the background on those. There's updates for the CRM sync. So I really do encourage you, if you can't get to Summit, certainly look at the keynotes, look at the roadmaps, look at the sessions there, and you will be able to see a lot more will be revealed. I can't share more, but I really, you just have a look and see what's there, because you'll be hopefully pleasantly surprised, and there's a lot of work going on in the background. I've been involved, and I know a couple of others on the call have been involved in alpha and beta testing of some of these new features, and there's some amazing stuff with Gen AI, and I can't reveal more, but yeah, tune into Summit. Is Marketo relevant? 100% absolutely. If it's right for your company, if you're big and enterprise, but yeah, please you need to maximize it. There's so many features in there that they're not add-ons, they're part of the package, so use them. Yes, email editor, you have to have your migration over into the Experience League, which Courtney was on about. So that is a blocker. So until you get your IMS migration, you can't access it. So that is the blocker. But that going over into the Experience League, that is the future of where Marketo will shine. That's where the refreshed user experience, the interactions, and a lot of these features, this is how you'll access them there.
Yeah, and on that, we won't dive into it right now, but I think, Zoe, didn't you just do a deep dive into the IMS migration? And so you can kind of go check that. There's a video on that if you guys have interest in that. But I do kind of want to talk about that email editor, because we keep saying, oh, there's exciting things coming. There's exciting things coming. There's exciting things that have already come. So with this new email editor, that is available, again, unfortunately, not quite yet if you haven't migrated over to the IMS. But Audreon, how are you thinking about using this email editor? And do you plan on using it to help democratize email building? Or what do you think that you're going to do? How does it play into your strategies?
Yes, so I'll tell you that we are planning to actually use the email editor to democratize creation. So currently we actually use a third party called Mac. I don't know if anyone's actually used that, but the good thing about the email builder is it's bringing asset building back into Marketo. So hopefully with the new email editor, as well as like the landing page updates and the form updates, will bring all of the asset, email, and landing page creation back into Marketo. So right now we actually have a team outside of the MOPS team that is creating emails in NAC, syncing them over to Marketo, which could get a little messy if the sync breaks or something is happening on the NAC platform. So the nice thing about that is everything's going to be in Marketo. We don't have to worry about those sync issues. So the idea behind how our process works currently is MOPS isn't having to go back and forth and get the final version of that email. It's this other team, shared services email team, that is creating those assets, getting the approvals, and then by the time MOPS touches it, we're queuing the final version of it. So it's going to be really nice with the new editor to just have that already in Marketo and in one source rather than, another platform. So it's going to save time, going to save money. And
Yeah.
hopefully with all of the, updates coming to it, it's going to really be a competitor with those.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it sounds like even in the, we use NAC as well as Zora, and outside of NAC, there's obviously other tools too. I don't want to obviously just zone in on that one, but I think across it, we're seeing in the industry that people are trying to consolidate and bring things in where they can. If that is what makes sense and if it works for you, I think that there's also incredible power in some of the other tools. But I think that this is where we're starting to see that that Adobe is, they're definitely not, sunsetting anything with Marketo. They're pouring resources into it,
Right.
which is really exciting, and it's going to make these processes a lot smoother. And just really, like you mentioned, we're not going to have to worry about integration syncs, sync issues and things like that. So I want to put a pin in talking about the future, only because I actually think that, and we could come back to it by the end of this office hours if we want to, but I also think that there's going to be a lot more to talk about in the next office hours. So plugging that, if you guys want to join April office hours, virtual mug, all that stuff too. But let's dive into some, what are we doing now? What are some issues people have? We got so many great questions. We're going to try and get through as many as we can. And we can never get through in 1 hour all the questions that we get from you guys. So if we don't answer it now, please know that we're keeping it on our backlog of questions. But let's dive in. So we've got some technical questions. We have enabled Munchkin tracking on our website, and we can now see anonymous reporting within Marketo. But can we extract all those activities of anonymous users from Marketo? Wolfgang, do you have some tricks for us?
Yeah, that's going to be a quick one because the answer is no. Reason being is Marketo is a person-based database. So basically, yes, it holds activities of anonymous users when it's coming via the tracking temporarily until it can assign it via a distinct action like filling a form, something like that it can connect to a user record. From that point on, you basically unmask the anonymous traffic. And then it's connected to a personal record. You can extract it then because you can query the API or anything like that based on that. But the pure anonymous activities are not accessible via the API, so you can't extract it directly from Marketo.
Okay. Thank you for that. Get it quick and easy. Let's get through them. I'm actually going to, sorry to our panelists, because we kind of have a good flow here of our questions, but we haven't heard from AJ yet. So I want to bring him into the conversation. And we had a really good question around attribution. And I mean, this was an open-ended question. But AJ, I would love to talk to you. How do you best handle attribution challenges, which is something I think all of us on this call will have experienced?
Yeah, absolutely. So first and foremost, I'll plug. I definitely think Marketo measures is the way to go with that. Just with what you can do, it's just a lot more efficient. It makes the process just a lot simpler, especially with reporting and creating dashboards and just things like that. However, there are some things that you can do in Marketo to really get the most out of your experience within Marketo. And some of the things I recommend is really having a centralized program to track your lead source details, as well as the most recent for both of those fields. There's a ton of articles that explain how to do this across Marketo Nation. I've worked with Adobe that we're coming out with a new one by using executable campaigns, so everything just kind of runs seamlessly. And with that, just really having a cohesive UTM strategy and utilizing your UTM fields. So not only having just UTM, your regular UTM fields, but you can go as far as creating UTM fields for both first touch, last touch, multi-touch, and stamping those via either hidden form fields or putting some codes in your email tracking. It's a much more roundabout way to be able to accomplish that in Marketo, but it does get the job done and just sets you up for success when you're going into Marketo Measure. The last thing that I'll add to is it never hurts to have a very disciplined naming convention strategy and just kind of campaign hierarchy. Those things do matter when you're doing any type of reporting, especially if you make the move into Marketo Measure. Like the more cleaned up those things are, the less issues, or I like to call them undisciplined processes, that Marketo Measure will spotlight for you. So those are kind of some of the ways that I would tackle that and going towards attribution.
Yeah, that's really, really good insight. And I would second that, but take like a zoomed out view too, because some of the challenges aren't necessarily even down at that technical reporting element. It's also like, how do you find alignment between the teams? Because if you don't have that alignment on how you're looking to report on things, because if you are going first touch, if you're going multi-touch, the way that that's going to affect your channel reporting could look very, very different. So if you're just starting to set up an attribution model, I would maybe start to record all those different touches and see how that pans out in your reporting, and then agree a strategy and move forward with that and give that time to come to fruition and analyze it and then synthesize it and decide if that is the right strategy. But definitely try to be aligned in the way that you talk about it, because what you can find is you're talking about two different things within different stakeholder groups, and they want different kinds of measurement, and then it starts to get messy even if you have really good processes in place. Is it answering the questions that you really want to answer? And they can look very different based on that attribution strategy.
Yeah, and a quick little note on that. I'm glad you actually said that, because that's a big thing for us here at Sprout when we were setting up our whole attribution strategy. Is we make it a really good point to stay away from using the term of credit or anything like that, because what we don't want to do is we don't want to create competition between any of the teams or anything like that. So we do our best to, whenever we're talking about attribution, we're simply talking about influence, because it's really like, I like to think of it kind of like a track, really, like, or a race. Like you're really handing off the baton, and it's a team effort. It's not a marketing versus sales. It's what is the best way, what is overall the recipe that kind of works, that pushes people through the funnel, and where does that exchange happen, and where what levers can you pull to accelerate that, what are working, and what levers can you stop pulling that are kind of slowing things down. So stay away from using credit.
That's a great tip. Yeah, we use influence too. We use that terminology. We talk about it as far as like the influence of it. Okay, moving on. Thank you so much. We have a great question around engagement programs. So engagement programs can be leveraged, or I think it's more, can engagement programs be leveraged to resend the same email to the same contact after certain months? Is this a possibility, and how would you go to set this up? Zoe, do you have some insight for us on that?
Yes. It very much depends on how many engagement programs you've got and how mature your Marketo instances and the users and things like that. So if you've only got a few engagement programs you're just building up, then you can do this through smart campaigns. So you can do it on sort of a local level on the individual engagement program. So you can do things like rules and timeframes, and so you can do that if somebody has been delivered an email and yet they haven't opened it, you can resend that after a time period of 3-6 months. You could even, if somebody has consumed it and has opened it, again, you may want to do that as a longer frame. But yes, you can do it on a local level. But what we do is when you get up to a considerable number of nurture programs, which cover the sort of the top, middle, and the bottom of the funnel, then you probably want to start adopting and using a nurture controller. So this does a couple of things. It first of all makes sure that the leads are qualified for a nurture program. It makes sure that they're only in one nurture program at a time. But then when they've exhausted that program, it'll move people on to the next relevant nurture program. Also within a nurture program, if somebody engages with the content, they may transition from one stream to another. So all of this control, it can be done. It can be done through smart campaigns. It can be done through a nurture controller, which is maybe in your center of excellence or your operation. So the answer is yes. The question is for the company is, what is that cadence you want to re-deliver that content to the person? Is it 3 months? Is it 6 months? It also depends on the content of the nurture. Is it evergreen content that is still relevant 12 or 18 months later? If it's something that's more short-term content, then you need to put some rules around that so that if it's in a stream and I don't know, say email program number 7 is only valid for a 3-month period, then you pull that out. So there's one answer, there's multiple answers, but absolutely yes, there are ways you can do it. It's just knowing why you're doing it and what cadence you want to do it on.
And Zoe, would you recommend if you were going to do it within, rather than the nurture controller? I like the idea of that. I'd love to explore that a bit further. But if you're doing it within an engagement program, would you do it like with nested programs, or would you do it with multiple streams, or how would you recommend?
I've done all of the above. And again, it depends on the company, it depends on the audience that you're going out to. And it depends on the users, the team that you've got in place, what their level is. Yes, some people can will do nested. We also have we've gone to a global library, so we have an engagement content global library, and then we pull those programs into individual engagement programs and individual streams. So that way you can share information. But because we've got people at different levels, we don't tend to go with the nested as much unless it's going to be an engagement program that we know is very specifically for one region. So if it was, say, for North America or EMEA, then yes, we would potentially look at nested. If it's for our APAC or LAR region, just because of the maturity there, we tend to have them more as your sort of standard out the box nurture programs.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, Wolfgang, I've got a question for you here. How would you inject dynamic decision making into your Marketo database? And also, can I speak today? It's early. It was early for Audreon and AJ, though. Sorry.
Speaking works well. On the injecting dynamic decision making, actually, that's a cool question. That brings out the nerd in me a little bit, because there's multiple ways how to do that. So obviously, simplest one is you could build some logic in a smart campaign itself that is somewhat dynamic. I would say call that half static, but okay, you can do something like that. But Marketo has functionalities that are really cool to do that. So you could do a self-service flow step that kind of pushes out information about that person. You can do as small or large of a calculation outside of Marketo, push it back, and then continue with your workflow on those persons. You could work with a webhook that gives you a response. You could even, not here, but if you talk to Josh Errington, he can tell you fantastic stories about how to use webhook self-service flow steps, third-party systems to create some decisions, maybe ChatGPT or whatnot. Inject that back into Marketo, run your workflows on that. We personally, on our side, we have our own models that are custom ML models that we've trained for specific use cases, and those are getting injected back into Marketo as well. You can either do that within a workflow, you can do that on a object level. So let's say you are bringing something back, like let's keep it simple, a predictive score or something like that. Then you have that on your Marketo person, and then you can run your normal workflows from there as well. So there's a ton of ways how you can do that. which is really cool. And that's, I think, one of the reasons, if I may piggyback a little bit on Zoe's question in the beginning, why Marketo is such a strong enterprise platform, because of those functionalities, because of those extensibilities. So you're never left hanging with a feature that needs to be part of the platform for you to be able to utilize it. There is so much connectivity and so much possibility. And that's something where Marketo is really in a class of its own. So that's how I would do it. And the things you can do with that is literally endless. You can do that to manage your database. You can do that to get additional intelligence in. You can do a ton of cool things with that. The question literally is, what is helping your organization? So what kind of dynamic decision making do you need? And what is the benefit that this dynamic decision making should create? What we see very often, obviously, if you understand your recipients or your personas well, then you can use dynamic decision making to understand, for example, what kind of interests they have, map that towards the engagement programs that you have maybe set up, things like that. You can put your entire Marketo outreach on autopilot if you do that well. And obviously that's good for all of us MOPS people, because it means we have a humming engine that we can love watching instead of tinkering with the engine every single day.
This is true. This is true. So kind of shifting focus, but it won't be to anybody's surprise that's joining in today or on this call, because it has been the hottest thing to be talked about for a while, which is AI. And we know that obviously everything's evolving at a really rapid pace. I think it started very much in like a content gen focus, but from an operational perspective, it's really coming into focus within our roles and marketing automation. Audreon, how do you see, without obviously going super into everything that's going to come maybe post summit that we can talk about, how do you see Marketo Engage adapting to the future of marketing automation within this AI space?
Yeah, I definitely would agree. Like, we've seen, obviously in the operations world, things are always changing, but I think with AI coming into play, those changes are going to be even more rapid. So that's important to consider. But I think Marketo has already been kind of, showing and integrating AI into their platform, obviously, with things like, the new email builder. You have the AI assistant there. So it's going to make, content creation easier. And also in things like dynamic chat, as well as interactive webinars, you have that personalization, right? So it's going to make those assets more personalized and easier to create. There's also things like predictive modeling. So in Marketo Measure or AJO, kind of AI is going to help point out what steps and what outcomes are going to be more likely with certain steps when taken by certain people in your customer base. I think Marketo will also have to kind of react to the outside challenges. So that's things like, I know something that I have to focus on is deliverability. So, we have Apple that just released the new display of stacking emails, or, showing the logo. So how will Marketo kind of help us break through and get our emails displayed, or things like bot mitigation, improving their algorithm to get that activity out of our activity log. So I think Marketo is actually doing a lot already, but of course, it's always going to be changing, and there's always something to consider. And just because AI is going to be there doesn't mean we can just like let it go rapid, right? AI is also continuously learning, so we need to have those checks and balances. But I think in the end, it's going to be, more of a help than a hurt.
No, yeah, I definitely agree. And I'm really glad that you brought that up, because genuinely, I've spent a lot of time thinking about the forward roadmap of AI and where it is, and less so much that there are going to be situations that we're going to need to react to, and AI could come in and help support in that way. So you've literally just given me food to thought in this last 30 seconds. And one thing I kind of want to share, one viewpoint is, and I was talking about this a few weeks ago, is that when marketing automation became a thing, I think it did scare a lot of people that it was going to take over jobs, or there wasn't going to be a need for marketers in the way that we knew. And actually out of it came a whole new industry, right? And a whole new, the way that we specialize in things and new skill sets. And I think that's what we're going to see in automation too. So I really encourage anybody who's on this call that in AI as well, I encourage anybody on this call that if you haven't kind of started to dive into that world, even if it's just at a surface level, start to watch webinars. There's some really cool people already building things with AI in an operational perspective. If you have interest in those, let me know, like find me on LinkedIn and I'll send you guys some cool things I'm seeing out there, because it's a great time for us to embrace it and be the drivers of it rather than kind of along in the passenger ride. I think marketing operations and automation professionals can really play a key role in AI and using Marketo to build out some really cool things. Okay, I'd like to kind of switch it up now and do a round robin question, if you guys are all okay with it. AJ, I'm going to start with you, but I would really love to hear everybody's hot take on this. What is your biggest roadblock in MOPS?
I think a general roadblock that I tend to see is just, and you kind of touched on this, like with AI, like the landscape is constantly changing pretty rapidly. And, whether it's Marketo or any other technologies, things are, strategies, they're just always changing. I think one of the biggest roadblocks is just kind of feeling like lost in the woods a little bit. And my best piece of advice around that is, in order to kind of keep a pulse on industry trends or just what's happening in AI, like I really think some of the best things that you can do is to just get involved in communities, join calls like this, read Marketo Nation, get involved in all the different type of Slack communities. There's a ton of them out there. But most importantly, just like stay curious. And the biggest piece of advice is, even if you know how to do a certain program, I think we have to be able to learn, unlearn, and relearn. And if you constantly kind of have that like mentality, you will constantly be able to like adapt and evolve and just stay on these trends. Just always be curious and be looking for ways to make the process you just did scalable, be more efficient, like always be curious and chasing, is there a better way? And that's kind of how I've tackled that roadblock, and what's really helped me just keep like a pulse point on the trends and everything like that, because it can feel a little overwhelming at times.
That's really great advice. Thank you. Wolfgang, you're next in line on my screen, so let's jump to you.
Actually, I think what AJ said is really great advice. I'd like to add to that. Try to step away from what you're doing often enough to see the greater picture, because MOPS we tend to get pulled down into the weeds of operational everyday things a lot, because obviously we are responsible for making everything work. But what you need to do is you need to step away often enough to understand what is the thing that you should focus on that brings your company the furthest. And that's sometimes not the next operational fix. It needs to be something bigger. It needs to be embracing a larger change. Otherwise, you'll never move big places. And you need to find good balance with that. And you can only find balance if you kind of change the perspective once in a while. Otherwise, you'll literally just go open your emails and work off the requests of people every single day, which is great for them, but bad for the company eventually, because you're not tackling the big things that allow you a leap forward. AI is one of those changes that we now have to embrace. I think there was a lot of good feedback here already. You can basically make the decision to say, well, I just focus on the things that I do. And see what's happening, but that then kind of takes away the opportunity that you really bring your organization forward in a way that's meaningful. And the question is, how is AI meaningful? Audreon kind of hit that very well, I feel. Like on a content, the Gen AI bit is cool, but that might not be the biggest lever for your organization. It might just be something else, understanding your attribution better, making your users better. I don't know what kind of operational struggle you have. If you don't walk away and kind of look at the bigger ticket items, you'll never strategize, think about how to fix them forward. And I think that's one of the biggest roadblocks that I see very often when we're working with customers.
No, that is true. That's definitely, and I like that both of you guys kind of are already, not Audrey and Zoe, I'm not teeing you up to go this way. I want your honest opinion, but I like that both of these have been kind of like, don't always kind of get stuck in the nitty gritty. Also remember to try to take that wider view, because that is how we become strategic partners to the business versus maybe just kind of operational executors. Zoe, I'll come to you next.
Yeah, well, actually, your last sentence, that's pretty much what I was going to say. It's about, I think one thing with MOPS is we're very much, quite often it can be seen as an internal service industry. So it's about showcasing and educating the company of what we can do. We can be part of the strategy and moving forward. So, and understanding simple things like why we need clear briefs, why we need people to respect deadlines, because if they know the volume that's behind and the requirement, and somebody says, can you create a nurture program with 10 emails and I want it out by Friday night, it's not going to happen in an ideal, in most cases. So by showcasing the MOPS function, the individual skill set, the tools that we've got, the strategy, and being part of that bigger conversation. So yeah, sharing and educating to give the MOPS teams a sort of a place at the table and relevance within the company.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because like going back to this email builder that we were talking about, maybe it could happen by Friday night, but should it? And that's where you come in to be that best placed person to provide that guidance and advice. Thank you. Audrey, what's yours?
Yeah, I would agree with what everyone has said so far. I think I would even take it a step further as far as what roadblocks I experience is once you do have that big picture and you see that way that you can change a strategy or something, getting other teams on board is not always the easiest. Sometimes people are really against change. So if a process is working, they will just want to keep it that way. And, you know, from an operations perspective, as Wolfgang said, like we're trying to make things work. So if we see that, hey, you can, you know, change your lead gen operations over here, and then that's going to help us with things like attribution on the back end. Getting that change will most likely be at first kind of opposed, and then hopefully it will take a little bit of convincing to actually, you know, let them look at the big picture as well. So
yeah, and on that kind of convincing people, speaking in their language, how you kind of present this. There's a really good, don't quote me on this, because I do think that there was a mug around it. There was definitely a Mopsapalooza session around it that Jessica Cow did that was like from geek speak to CMO speak, and how do we present things that we do. That's always not necessarily just that session, but anything that is there to consume that kind of allows us to pull ourselves out of the nitty gritty and execution style and present it so that, you know, we can bring stakeholders on board and they can understand that value, I think is a really good call out.
I really love that, if I may add to that, because like that's like we tend to speak in what matters to us. So basically making something X% better, making it more seamless, unlocking this and that. But that's not necessarily the benefit of the people we have to sell it to internally. Like we kind of have to switch perspectives and have to make sure we talk in their lingo on what's the benefit for them. I think that is a really crucial one.
Yeah, no, that's a really good call out. Okay, so diving into some best practice. This has been flying by. We only have 20 more minutes, so we have lots of questions still. We'll try and get through these. So Database cleanup. We are in Zora in the middle of a big project around this, so I really appreciate any tips and tricks you guys have for it. But yeah, we had some people ask, they're continuously going over their limit, and there's lots of different ways that these contact records are coming into the system. But Wolfgang, what are some of your best practices around the cleanup and the maintenance and hygiene of your database?
Yeah, that's a really good one. Like, we have that every year when renewals are up with any of our customers, right? Then it's always the question, hey, what's going on in your database? No, point is, think of it from a different perspective. Don't think of it like this is my limit in the database. So that's, I think, the wrong way of going about it. Come from the business value perspective. So basically think about what kind of records in your database produce value for your organization, because that is your guideline. Measure it by that. Everything that is not producing a significant amount of value shouldn't be in your database because it's costing you money. And that's the case, obviously, that's what we want to avoid. So do that. If you have a good guideline on what produces value, so that can be activity ratings. So everyone that has not interacted with anything that you did, let's say in the last 2 years, how relevant is that person really to your business? And so on and so forth. Come at it from that perspective. Once you have that mapped out, then we can talk about technical solutions, because there are possibilities to kind of monitor that, plug that into Marketo via the API that tells you, hey, this is the amount of people that you potentially could get rid of because they are not active anymore. You can then pull those out. You can still store the information somewhere. Yes, you would potentially be losing some activity records, but again, how important is a web visit from 3 years ago really to your business going forward? Like, there's a ton of possibilities how to mitigate them, but in my world, it really starts from the business value perspective. So if you understand that well, the rest usually falls into place, and that's then more solutioning on what makes more sense for you. And then going forward, you should keep your database in check. And if your database then grows in size, and you know everything in that database produces is business relevant to you, then it's a completely different ballgame when you talk about renewals, because then you can go to your team and say, hey, look what great job we did. We've grown our relevant database so much that we now have to go to the next tier. I think then it's not becoming a negative, it's actually becoming a positive conversation. That's what we should try to get at.
Yeah, that is a really good call out. And in the chat, there's been some chat around this too, which is like, especially from a EMEA perspective, we have this GDPR view on things, and are we even able to still really contact them after a certain point, and should we be? Which kind of leads us into our next question too. So Zoe, I'd love for you to chat a bit more about this too, which is like, one of the things in that last question, somebody mentioned that some of them are list purchases and people bringing them in, salespeople bringing them into the database. So what is the guidance? Not just, EMEA has a very obviously more targeted focus, but even wider, I'd say it's best practice guidance. What would be your advice on list purchases, sales reaching out to them, adding to the database?
I mean, a pure list purchase from a European point of view, my answer is just don't do it. You do not know what you're getting. You're going to get junk. You're going to inflate your database. And if you don't clean that data before, or check that data before it goes in, then you are just bumping up and you're going to have a bloated database. Obviously, that's a bit more, there are GDPR rules around it. There are countries or regions that you can still either purchase or get third-party lists. So like, say, the Zoom info. If you are getting volume of third-party lists, whether it be for wherever, a webinar or something, I would also recommend you have some kind of pre-cleaning before it goes into Marketo, before it syncs to your CRM. So even something like we run all our leads through Bright Verify. So is it actually a valid email? You would not believe how many people cannot type or spell their own name or their company names. And you get typos in registrations, in forms, and things. So they're basically junk. You're never going to be able to contact them as a marketable lead. So I would say don't buy them, but the ones that you do, have some verification process in there. Another one is, if you've got we have a segmentation called chronic non-responders. I wish I'd named it something else, but it's basically inactive leads that have been inactive for 18 plus months, and they're the ones that we review. And it's a case of, especially with the changes with Google and Yahoo coming in, they're going to deactivate inactive addresses after 2 years. So you want to get in there early. You want to get them out, because if you continue to email these people and they're totally inactive, you're potentially going to get into spam mode and spam territory. So you could get flagged for spamming these inactive. So it goes back to, again, what Wolfgang was saying about, is your database clean? So you should take responsibility for what's coming in as well as what's already in there. Yes, it is like the tide's coming and there's so much going on, but you can set up best practices and audits, and you can do that. Maybe you may do it monthly, you may do it quarterly, depending on what you're looking for. But the pure out and out list purchasing, well, that's banned in Europe because of GDPR. And also I do believe in our contract, for example, it's something that can be a red flag with Adobe. So if you're seen to be buying a larger, and that it potentially is breach of contract. So my short answer is don't do it. If you are getting leads in, verify, check them, and have auditing and smart campaigns and reports in place to go back to on a regular cadence.
Yeah. And I think that we're seeing across the industry, and I don't want to dive into it too much here because we've got other questions to answer, but we're seeing across the industry that this idea of scraping information is being definitely locked down by some well-known contact acquisition tools, kind of getting a slap on the wrist from some of our also favorite business social media platforms. I'm not naming any names on this, but we might have seen, and if you haven't seen, you could definitely go and Google it, that there's been a backlash anyways with this kind of bulk purchase and idea of scraping across the industry. And so I think that's, a really good stance to have. And yeah, a lot of the stuff you're going to get is junk, so you save yourself that money anyways. So we got a question. AJ, I want to shoot to you for this one. We got a question about sandboxes, and it says, does it make sense to have a Marketo sandbox when you're implementing a new instance?
Yeah. So my short answer, and this may be a little bit against the grain, is no, I don't think that it is completely necessary to have a sandbox when doing a Marketo instance. And this comes from just my past agency life. I've done a ton of new Marketo implementations, and 11 out of 10 clients didn't have access to a sandbox. Now, with that being said, every organization is different. As we know, there are some organizations that they want everything developed in the sandbox, tested thoroughly before push to production, and that's perfectly okay. I'm not telling you to go against that rule or logic whatsoever. If you have the budget or whatever to grab the sandbox, then go ahead. I think it's a great way, especially for new users, to just get in there and build and test things. You know, I'm in one at Sprout all the time. But do I think it's completely necessary? No, I think you can get a lot done in just learning how to properly test in your production instance. Plus, you're using some of your real data to really see if your programs work. So no, I don't think it's 100% necessary. If you have the budget and you can get it, great, take it.
Yeah, and that's a good point. In the chat, somebody mentioned if you have sandboxes for your CRM and your ERP that you're then connecting your Marketo sandbox to check on some of that other big development stuff you might be doing in releases, then it can be a really good point, but not everybody has that either.
And with the CRM sandbox, only because this gave me some PTSD from I've had this happen, is for anybody out there that may have this, do not connect your Marketo production instance to your Salesforce sandbox thinking that you can switch it over later. I've had that, and just don't do it. It's a for life connection, I promise you. So don't do it.
That is a great call out here, especially because obviously with this question, they're talking about implementing a new instance. So all these integrations are going to be brand new. And also I love implementing a new instance. My very first Marketo was a brand new fresh instance, which is a really crazy way to dive into it.
It's the best. It's one of the most things, like, you know, because most of us, we either absorb an instance that's been passed down for years, and some things are really, really good. Some things need to be a little bit more organized, but there's just nothing like a fresh instance where, like, the world is your oyster, so to speak, where like you can really take the time to get everything right, set the foundation, things as simple as just naming conventions, building the programs, creating the templates that just really make everything scalable when you're thinking about like the maturity model when it comes to really scaling your Marketo instance.
Yeah, no, definitely. You can also, diving into this like world is your oyster analogy, you can also, in my case, also look back a few years later and be like, why did I build it that way? Because you didn't have anything necessarily to look at and react to, which is also fun. We all learn as we're just starting. All right, so advice on handling invalid emails that are not actually bad and invalid. And this is a good call out. So like, what if the recipient's IT departments blocks Marketo emails? What can we do around that, Audreon?
Yeah, I feel for this person that's asking this question, because I'm assuming these are emails that are showing delivered and then you're just not getting any engagement with those. But that's an assumption. I mean, I also assume that we're taking the first steps to make sure that we're following best practices, right? So our email's authenticated. We're thinking about timing and volume there. We are not putting spammy language in the subject line. We're emailing people that actually want our email. So double opt-in is a really great way to make sure we're doing that. We're following GDPR and CAN-SPAM standards. And I would assume once all that is done, we're also looking at like deliverability tools. Those are really helpful. So I've used like Validity or MessageBird to actually see, hey, according to these seed lists, this is what email service providers you're landing in the spam versus the inbox. That's really a great way to kind of be more sure about where your email is landing. Also, if none of that works, we have the option of, asking. This also isn't always an option, obviously, but asking the person to safe send the domain. I think in the end, again, this is always changing. Custom spam filtering is always changing, company to company, obviously. So if you're seeing that again, those contacts that are not interacting and it's been a long time, this goes back to the database cleanup. Unfortunately, like you probably should not hold on to that, even if you've tried all of those strategies. So it's really disheartening, but in the end, it's not going to give any value if those people aren't engaging.
Yeah. And would you say because that asking them to whitelist into CAN-SPAM, I would say in my previous role, we did do that sometimes with key customers, because we would have customers say like, I'm not hearing about your events. I'm not getting these invitations. I'm finding out about it through somebody else in the industry, but I am a customer. And then you feel even worse because it's like, of course, we've been sending you these things. We want you here. We want that. But would you recommend that over maybe like prospects, or what do you think?
Yeah, I think that could definitely be a conversation with like an account rep, right? So you definitely want your customers to be receiving your emails. I mean, I've had instances where our own emails are getting blocked and then people are asking me, hey, I never got this. I'm like, well, I got it probably because I added it as a safe sender. But yeah, I think that is definitely an approach there with your key customers, especially.
Perfect. We have 5 minutes. We have a couple questions left. I'm just trying to check real quick before we dive into this last one, if there's any questions we missed from the chat, but I think that we got them. Thank you, panelists, because as we've been talking, you guys have been jumping in and answering questions as well, which is so great. I think we're good in the chat. So yes, okay. Best practices when it comes to webhooks and Marketo. And this is an exciting one, brings out some geekiness. I love it. Wolfgang, do you have any tips and tricks?
First and most important is do understand when a webhook is the right technology to use for your use case. I think that's the most important thing. Yes, you can make a webhook do a lot of things, but it's not necessarily the right technology to use. So if you want to do mass updates, if you want to do batch things, that's all kind of speaking against using a webhook. A webhook is there for a real-time data transfer on a one-to-one level. So that's why it only works in trigger campaigns. That's why there is, or in small campaigns, it processes one by one, and so on and so forth. And if you kind of keep that in mind, then really you can't do a lot of things wrong, because webhooks are really easy to use. Another best practice is know the limitations that Marketo has on webhooks. So basically, they are having a certain execution time. They are running in sequence. And basically that can lead to a queue that's building up pretty quickly. And basically, let's say you want to, I don't know, ingest something into your workflow, and you want to do that for 100,000 people because you're sending a really large campaign, then expect that none of that processing is going to go in a snap, because like you're building up this queue, it needs to work off through 100,000 records, and then eventually that will delay, for example, what's happening in the background. Where webhooks are super good is if you want to do something quick. Let's say you have, I don't know, you are managing your subscription status outside of Marketo because you have a system of trust. Like, I don't know how many unsubscribes you're getting. I hope it's close to 0. So that's, for example, something that you can automatically very easily and quickly transfer to a third-party system. You could do so whenever something is really relevant in real time to go into another system. Then it's really good. It's super easy to set up. But basically, my main recommendation is think about your use case. Does it really make sense? Is that a use case that will happen for a lot of people at the same time? That are usually signals where a webhook might not be the right technology for that. Then look at something else. Especially today, like if you look at many CDPs out there, I'm excluding specifically real-time CDP because we have proper connectors there. But if you look to a lot of CDPs, a lot of CRMs, basically they kind of feint connectability because they can receive a webhook. That is not a way of integrating enterprise-grade databases with millions of users. I can already tell you that's not gonna fly. I mean, we sometimes have performance issues and really native connectors when it comes to even Salesforce and stuff like that, which we will get improved or is improving now with version 2 and so on and so forth. Think about doing that with webhooks. Like if the amount of data you want to transfer is a lot, look at something else, even if someone tells you that's a possibility.
No, that is a very good call out. And on that, because we only have 1 minute left, if people haven't taken the time to dive into webhooks yet, and they have no reason to start down that road, do you have any advice of where to start to get information to kind of upskill in that? Because you mentioned how easy they can be to use, but it can feel like an unknown black box if you've never used them before.
Oh yeah, there's actually a ton of possibilities in doing that. So obviously, yes, start with Experience League, start with the community. There's a ton of great examples of how you can utilize webhooks to do fantastic things. Then what you can also look at, if you're a little bit in the automation game, I'm not sure if you looked at, for example, Workfront Fusion or systems like that. You can send a webhook to that. You can do a ton of cool things with that, processing your data there. You can even build models. We talked about dynamic decision making, like that is low-code interfaces where you can process data, push it back to Marketo. That's something I already did give a shout out to Josh Errington in this call. Like those guys are doing a lot of cool things. Like they have a lot of resources also on their website on what can be done with webhooks and self-service flow steps. So there's literally a ton of that out there. But the best recommendation I feel is like if you think about a use case that you want to do something outside of Marketo, you should always consider a webhook if it's not a mass data operation. And then basically what a webhook is, it's basically a JSON payload that you're pushing out. So it's basically you set it up in the admin panel and you basically say, hey, you basically create key values for pairs in that. And it's literally like adding in a token. It's like what you know from building emails. So it's really, really easy. And testing that out is also not very complicated. So it sounds nerdy, but a webhook is really something for everyone. I assure you. It's a little bit of a hump initially, but don't worry. Webhooks are really good. You can use it. You can master it. Not a problem.
Love it. Love it. What a great way to end. Thank you, panelists. This has been so great. I know we're a little bit over time, so I'm going to let you guys go quickly, but it has been a joy to spend this hour with you guys and have your insights. And I'm looking forward to seeing some of you guys at Summit. Thank you for everybody that joined the call with us and all of your great questions. And we hope to see you next month on the next office hours. Bye, guys.
See ya.